Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Hammer and Umpire Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Weber. I've got a few segments for you in this, kind of normal size, episode. It's not particularly long and not particularly short. It's kind of a summertime episode of a few things I had coming about. I've got a segment on, working this year's state finals for the third time here in Michigan, and some of the, feedback and observations that I made doing that. I've got a little segment on ejection reports. I've got a little segment on Ernie Quigley, one of the greatest sports officials of all time. I've talked about him before on the podcast, but I took a little trip to Canada recently and was at the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. So I want to talk about him again as well. And also we have our first, maybe only, but at least first rule change for high school baseball for 2024, and I've got a little segment on that. I've been lucky enough to be traveling around the world quite a bit since November and quite a bit this summer. Like I said already, that I just got back from Canada, but I also was in Europe for about 15 days on a trip with my wife and daughter. My daughter's high school band was doing like a little tour over there that they do every 4 years, and so we went on the trip and went to 6 different countries. We were in the Netherlands, we were in Germany, we were in Austria, we were in Switzerland, we were in Belgium, we were in France, and great experience. A good time to be away from things that you're familiar with. Sometimes that's a good thing, like baseball. I kind of get burned out on baseball from, the springtime through the summer. I still was trying to assign tournaments and different things I was doing, but obviously I wasn't working any games when I was over there. I've got some coming up here soon, and I already worked a few since I've gotten back. But, we got to step away sometimes from things and fight that burnout. I know a lot of people in the summertime work a lot of games, which I understand. You want to make some money, or you're trying to get better, or whatever your reasoning is. I have no problem. I've done that myself, but I've definitely cut down on the number of games I've worked from past years. And I feel like I'm a little healthier and happier when I've done that. But you got to do what you got to do out there. So hopefully you'll enjoy this episode. It's just kind of a normal length summertime episode. I've got some things coming up in the next few weeks here that I will, be talking about, like camps. I'm going to the 4-man CBUA camp in Indianapolis for the second time here this coming week. And I'm sure I'll do some segments on my experiences there. Hopefully I will, show that I can work and do well there. That's always the goal at a camp. And I urge you to seek out some new opportunities too, and try to make yourself better. Sometimes you got to throw yourself into some situations that you're not as familiar with, and that's a great way to get better for sure. So sit back and listen to another episode of the Hammer and Umpire Podcast. Well, I mentioned in my last podcast that I would be reporting back to you on my experiences in the Michigan High School Athletic Association State Finals. And I'm going to do that because I don't want to be a liar. Okay. Anyway, I was able to work my third state finals here for the MHSAA. And as the other two were, it was a great experience and things went off quite well. Had a really good crew that I was working with. I had Larry Anderson, I had Troy Miller, and Scott Walendowski. Scott was our crew chief. I was hoping to be crew chief this time, get a plate on one of the finals, but it didn't work out. And Scott was a great choice. Former minor league umpire. I think he worked all the way up to AAA. So a tremendous umpire and definitely well-deserving of that honor. So I guess I got to keep working. Here in the state of Michigan, you are not eligible for 3 years after you work a final. So 2027, I'm eligible again. And hopefully I can get back there and maybe work a final. In Michigan, we have 4 divisions, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we have games on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So all the semifinals and finals are on Thursday, and Friday, and then the 4 finals are on Saturday. So if you're working it, you work either 2 games on Thursday or 2 games on Friday, and then you work your final on Saturday. And so all 3 times that I've done it, I've always been Thursday and Saturday, which is fine, whatever. And just like last time, I worked the first game, which started at 9 a.m., and then the third game. And then for this particular time, I had the Division II final, which was the third game of the day. The first game went a bit long, so it started a little bit later, but that's all right. You're there anyway, so there you go. I'm going to kind of go through some of the things that I experienced, but if you've worked a state final in your state, or if you just know about how the state finals work in your state, and maybe someday you will be working it, I'd be curious. Leave a voicemail here on the Anchor app, or send me an email, and let me know how it kind of works, if it's similar or different to what we do here in the state of Michigan. Nonetheless, I had the first plate on Thursday. I ended up, plate, third base, and then first base. We've got a new director of the baseball officials, and he kind of did things a little bit different. So I'm not saying one way is right or wrong, but traditionally, if you started at the plate, you would go, plate, third, second. That's what I did, 3 or 4 years ago, whatever it was, 2019. The first time I did it, I had first, plate, third. You just kind of do the regular rotation. But, they moved it around a bit. So with a 4-man crew, you're going to work, the same game. The same crew is going to work all 3 games that you have together. And usually there's, not usually, always, there is one guy that does not have a plate. Because, there's 3 games and 4 guys. So somebody's going to be that guy out. I've had a plate every time I've done it, which is fine. I like that. That's kind of part of the deal, I guess. Anyway, my plate job was fine. I felt like I had a good zone, and I was locked in pretty well. And things went, reasonably well. We didn't have a whole lot of craziness out there. I think we had 1 rotation. When you're working 4-man, there's only really 3 big things you got to worry about when you're working the plate, as far as moving and rotations and stuff. But I thought it went well. I had a good ball game, close baseball game, back and forth. One team jumped out 4-0, and the other team came back and ended up beating them 6-4. We did have an issue with some student fans for one of the teams, the team that ended up losing, by the way. The fan had to get kind of kicked out of there, just people being silly about things. You always see that, certainly with the state finals. I'm sure this is the way it is in every state, where parents know this is it, man. This is potentially the last game for my son, and they know that it's a one and done thing, and you're out if you lose. So they get a little bit amped up for sure with the atmosphere. When I'm watching the other games in between my games, I certainly notice that. Our games are at Michigan State University in East Lansing, and MSU, of course, is a very big school, so they have good facilities. Baseball field is great. It's got LED lights. It's all grass, but it's really well-maintained grass that drains super well. Got good stands and everything. It's not like it's an SEC school that looks like a minor league stadium or something, but it holds a few thousand people, and usually we get really good crowds. And it's also happening at the same time as the softball, which is just, a walk across the little plaza away. And so they get good crowds there in a nice stadium. And then on Friday and Saturday, they have the finals for girls soccer. They have 4 of those, 2 each day. And so you get, and that's all in the same general area. And so you get this kind of festival kind of atmosphere, all kinds of people. Parking gets a little tough, but there's plenty of places to park on Michigan State's campus. So it's kind of fun. You got a lot of people. It's usually, warm out, which it was, and it's a great time. It's like got this buzz in the atmosphere, and I really like it. I've had the privilege of working many different types of games, and I definitely have enjoyed working my state finals as much as pretty much anything that I've ever worked. It's nice to meet some new guys and everything. Went down Wednesday night before Thursday. They give us a hotel and everything. Went out with some of the guys, and, we went out and got some food and stuff after they feed you and everything, but go and get something to drink or whatever after the meeting and talk to them and learn about them a little bit. That's half the fun for sure. And, we had our little 4-man mechanics meeting. One of the big things that we had talked about was for the last few years for 4-man, because there's so many people that are experienced with it from around the state that work it, even though you've got to work up to like quarterfinal before you get to the semis and finals here in Michigan, guys are not real great on the fly ball. So they were having guys go out on every fly ball, which in my estimation, and from what I've seen too, causes more problems because guys don't then pick up the bases and rotate properly, because they don't know 3-man as well either when they do that. So this time, we basically just umpired it and went out, paused, read, and reacted, and went out the way that you're supposed to based on whatever's happening with the fly ball and the fielder. And that seemed to work pretty well. I thought that was good. So anyway, the plate job went pretty well. We had some rain in the morning. That's what happened to me back in 2019 as well. But we didn't have any delays, and so the games went on as scheduled. Friday, I didn't work. Those went well. My second game on Thursday, I had third base. And, of course, if you're working third base on 4-man, it's kind of an all or nothing. Sometimes you might get absolutely nothing. And if you do get something, it's usually something reasonably significant. I didn't have any safe out calls at third base, but I did have a home run that was straight down the line. I thought it was going to hit the pole, and it did not. It just scooted inside for a fair home run, 3-run home run. In the middle of the game, and it was the pitcher who only gave up 1 run, and the kid had a 3-run home run as well. I think he's going to University of Michigan. He's a heck of a player. But at Michigan State, it's 340 down the line, and that's a good poke for anybody, certainly for a high school kid. So that was my significant call, and I was, I got it right. I saw the replay on it, because they live stream all the games and everything, so I was able to see that later, and I definitely got it right. I felt confident at the time, but I saw it after the fact. It's nice to confirm those kind of things. And then on the final, I had first base. And, as always seems to be the case when I have first base, I had several whackers over there. A few close ones that I think I got all right. And that's what people had told me afterward. Great plays by some of the infielders, first basemen, keeping their feet on the base and making good plays over there as well. And so that was the significance I had. I don't think we had any real big rotations or anything on that. And that was a good ball game, 2-1 ball game that the one team won. So it all went pretty well. It was a really good time. Weather was great on Saturday, and it was great to work the 4-man. Here later in July, I'm going to be going to the 4-man evaluation clinic in Indianapolis once again. I went there a few years ago, and I'm gonna, basically it's like CBUA 4-man thing in Indy. So you work a game at each of the 4 bases, and this experience, the 4-man that I've worked this year certainly helps, to get that in your mind and everything. So I appreciate that too. But I always like working these games, I definitely fill myself up with what I can do for high school ball once college baseball ends. And, it's definitely worth working to get to a state finals. And luckily, my partner, Brent Clark, who I worked quite a few high school games with over the last few years, he also had a state final this year, and it was his first ever. So I believe he had a really good experience as well. He kind of did the same, almost the same order I did, but he did, some of the same base. I think he had second base and I had first base, but he did plate first, second, I think. So anyway, good times. Again, if you have worked at state finals in some capacity, or you plan to and you know how it works in your state, I'd be curious to know how it works for you. And you can send me an email or go on the Anchor app here and just leave a 1 minute or less voice message. You can say a lot in 1 minute or less. And let me know how the state finals works in your state, and what kind of experience it might be for those umpires that are lucky enough to work it.
Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports app today and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Well, it's that time of year for summer baseball, in which the weather's getting a little hotter, definitely here in the north and the Midwest, and people's tempers and behavior is getting a little bit worse. So I've had some ejections, and I just wanted to talk a few minutes about writing a good ejection report. And you should write an ejection report whether it's your regular season for college or high school, but also during the summer if you're working for some assigner. It doesn't matter if it's like just some tournament or some weekly game, whatever it might be. If you have an ejection, you should do that. And it's also a good time to, work on your ejection writing report skills. And I had an umpire that had his first ejection, kind of his first report. And one of the big things with ejection writing is keeping it simple, one sentence, one idea. Short sentences, they're the easiest to read and understand. You don't want long, drawn-out sentences that can complicate things a little bit. You don't want a bunch of extra details. You're not doing a play-by-play of the game. As I said to him, it's kind of like Dragnet with Sergeant Friday. Just the facts, ma'am. That's what you want to go with. If you have a bunch of, extra details, you can call your assigner and or see them face to face, of course, too, and just talk to them and tell them any extra things that need to be there. You just want to know the specific situation, what led to the ejection, write it in paragraph form, cite a rule if needed, cite if you had a warning, which is always good. If there was profanity or something used, you don't, say it was bad language or the F word. You say exactly what somebody said. Hopefully you're not swearing as well. And you just keep it to the basic facts and describe what happened and keep it as accurate as possible. You, of course, keep a record of it. If there's some place you've got to send it, then you do that. And you take care of it when you get home, okay? Some assigners have different criteria for you. They want to know immediately, which is good. That's always good. If you're working multiple games and you have, you have 4 games and in the second game you have an ejection, well, right after that game, you can send a quick text or maybe a quick phone call, but definitely a quick text saying, I had an ejection in game 2. This is the basics, just a few sentences or like a few words really, and say, I will get you the report when I'm done with my other games. And then they know, because assigners want to have a heads up that something might be coming their way. They don't want to be blindsided and not have any information and they're behind the 8 ball. That is the worst feeling in the world. So you let them know that there's something coming and that you will get them the other pertinent information later as soon as you get a chance. Don't be afraid to write the report. Don't be afraid to have to eject and know that you're going to have to write a report. That's fine. That's just what you have to do. It happens every so often. And, hopefully the person kind of ejected themselves if it was a good ejection. Had one with just the last couple of days. Coach arguing about infield flies, not really understanding the rule. Typical, of course. And then, getting personal and end up getting himself ejected. Had another on, a 3-man game, actually, in which there was a couple close pickoff plays at first base. And the coach didn't like them or something or other, thought that they got them wrong. But, I wasn't there. But if we got an umpire right on top of it, I feel like he's probably doing okay with it. That's why you're, 6 to 10 feet away from the base. So nonetheless, he was saying some things as he was going across, and it was an assistant coach, and he ended up getting himself ejected. and, had the reports written up. The second one there with the pickoff plays and everything, more experienced umpire that was just a short and sweet kind of thing, and just told us the basic details. We had another one in which it was a little bit longer, but that's okay. I mean, very well written. I have a degree in English, so I always appreciate some descriptiveness in the writing, but I don't want it for the reports. And I had to work on that myself over the years because I can be a little lengthy in what I write. So I've had to just the facts, ma'am, kind of thing, and make sure I just have what I need there. Because if you are an assigner, try to put yourself in their position, you certainly don't want to spend all this time reading this report. You just want to know the basic things that happen. And of course, no matter what you write or say, make sure you're not lying and it's accurate, because we know there's cameras everywhere. There's a good chance somebody maybe had something on a cell phone. Obviously, a lot of things get streamed now. So if you were in the wrong, you have to admit that and make sure that you are as accurate as possible with your story. If you have to confer with your partner to make sure that you're getting it right, that's a good way to do it as well. And make sure you take care of those things. Don't have some ejection and then your assigner has to find out later that, oh, you rejected somebody? Oh, well, it's nice to know now. That kind of thing. You don't ever want that to happen. So those are a few things to keep in mind here. Do what you got to do. Take care of business out there. Give warnings when appropriate. Obviously, we know that there are a few things that are like immediate ejections, but most things are not. And if they decide to not heed the warnings, then take care of business and write the report later if you need to. So just a few things there for you on ejections and ejection reports. Do a good job on those, fellas. So we just got word from the National Federation of High Schools that there is going to be a rule change for high school baseball for next season, 2024. They're going to permit electronic communication devices from the dugout to the catcher. And the rule change will be rules 1-6-2 and 3-2-5. And basically, the use of one-way communication devices between a coach in the dugout and a team's catcher for the purposes of calling pitches will be permitted in high school baseball beginning in 2024. The new rules prohibit coaches from communicating with any other players beside the catcher on defense and with any player while batting. The coach must also be in the dugout when using the communication devices. So I know this will be a new change for those of you that only work high school baseball and below because they haven't had this. But they've had this for the last couple of years or so, maybe 2 or 3 years, I think, in collegiate baseball. And, of course, in professional baseball, they allow such things too. And I like it. I think it's great. It really speeds things up. There's lots of time wasted frequently, particularly in high school baseball games, between the catcher and whoever is giving him signals, and then miscommunications and such. Teams, of course, don't have to use it. There's lots of devices out there now, electronic devices that they can do this. They can do it with the simple earpiece if they want. They have these kind of wristband things that they can wear. Like they almost look like a little Apple Watch or something that can give like a signal or something like that too. It's whatever they decide to do. I've never heard of anybody hacking it. There was somebody in one of the Facebook groups I saw or something or other that was like, oh, is somebody going to hack it or whatever? I've never heard of that. I'm not saying it's not possible, but usually doesn't happen. So I think it's a great change, and I'm glad that they did it, and it will speed things up and move the game along at a better pace for sure. All right. There's some other changes I'd love to see them do in high school baseball that are similar to college. I'd like to see them change how they do the conferences, the charge conferences. Right now, of course, we have 3 charge conferences for the whole game for a particular coach. He'd come out 3 times in one inning, right, and not have to change the pitcher. But, 4th time he comes out, he has to change the pitcher. That's fine. But the problem is that we have so many times, particularly with the catcher who wants to go out and talk about signals or whatever the heck they're talking about. I've had games where they ask, 3 or 4 times a game. And then sometimes, you'll get the shortstop coming in or whoever it might be as well. I wish they would change it to the college rule where you get 6 and you get 3 with the coach total. However, if your players decide to, your catcher goes out there 2 times, your first baseman comes over, your shortstop comes over, well, now the coach is down to 2. And that's the way it works. So I like that. That definitely cut down the player interactions on the mound significantly because a lot of them are completely unneeded. I know every once in a while they need to do something or whatever, but frequently it's just a waste of time. And the other thing I'd like to see them do is that you can only come off your base or go talk to your coach when you're on offense when they make a pitching change. It's such a waste of time as well in high school baseball that there's a mound visit, and then, there's guys on first and second, and they're all over there at third base talking to, the coach over at third base in the coach's box there. And then they got to wait for them. They get all the way back over to the bases. That's a waste. If they make a pitching change, you can do that as long as you get back before the pitcher is ready. That's fine. I think they should change that too. I know we have all the timing things that we do in professional baseball and in collegiate baseball, and I think those work great, and they do cut down the game. I don't know if high school baseball is ready for that. I mean, I'd be okay with it, but I think that is a long time off for something that will be happening. But those other changes, just like here with the electronic communication, can be something that can be done straight away. We've had coaches in the area of West Michigan that have asked about the electronic communication, so I'm sure there'll be a few of them that will be very happy that this is the change. It is the way baseball is going now. It used to be back in the day, like when I played and when some of you played, I'm sure, the catchers called all the games. I was a catcher myself, and I would call pitches, and I felt like I did a pretty solid job doing it. But now almost no catchers call pitches in today's baseball. And so it really has been slowed down because the coaches want to micromanage everything. And this electronic communication, one-way communication, definitely will cut down on some of that lag time and dead time that we see throughout baseball games at the high school level. So anyway, a good change. We'll see if some others come out here as we go through the rest of the summer and into the fall. But that was the first one that was just recently announced.
This episode is brought to you by Unstoppable. Discover the inspiring true story about Anthony Robles, who defied every expectation to become a national wrestling champion in Unstoppable, a new original movie from Amazon MGM Studios and director William Goldenberg, evoking the excitement and camaraderie of classic sports dramas and thrilling wrestling matches. Unstoppable features an all-star ensemble cast, including Jarrell Jerome, Jennifer Lopez, Don Cheadle, Michael Pena, and Bobby Cannavale. Watch Unstoppable now, exclusively on Amazon Prime Video.
I recently took a trip to Canada for a few days. I go to Stratford, Ontario for their Stratford Festival. I've been doing that for over 20 years or so. And about 15 minutes from Stratford in Ontario is St. Mary's, Ontario, and it is the home of the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. And many, many years ago, I'd gone there. But recently, in the last few years anyway, they added a brand new building and, updated things and stuff like that. And I hadn't been there for probably 20 years or something. So I decided I'd go on this trip. So I went there, and, it's not very big, but it's worth going, especially if you're a big baseball fan. So I suggest it if you're in the area. And I was looking through there and looking at all this place. Of course, they got lots of stuff on the Expos and the Blue Jays and things like that. But they have a few umpires that are also in their Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. And probably the greatest of all of them is Ernie Quigley. Now, I know way back when, probably in the earlier days of this podcast, I probably did an umpire spotlight on Quigley, but I'm kind of doing another one here. I feel like I should, because I believe he is the greatest Canadian baseball umpire, and he is one of the greatest sports officials of all time. He's just an interesting person. You should Google him and look some stuff up on him. He was born in 1880 in Newcastle, New Brunswick, and lived all the way until 1960, and ended up playing basketball and coaching and different things like that at the University of Kansas. So he's a big legend at the University of Kansas. But also, he, for 31 years, from 1913 to 1944, he served the National League with distinction as a field umpire, supervisor of officials, public relations director. For 26 of those, he not only umpired Major League Baseball, but he also gained national prominence officiating Major College Football and basketball. So he'd do about 250 games a year. Typically, like in over 40 years, Quigley is estimated to have officiated 1,500 basketball games, 400 football games, and over about 5,400 baseball games, and log about 100,000 miles a year. I mean, he would be gone like 325 nights a year. Okay, so this guy was quite the sports official and kind of set the pace for a lot of other people in the future. He's also notable because he was working the 1919 World Series when the infamous Black Sox, Chicago White Sox, played Cincinnati. And he said that he did not really see any wrongdoing during the series. He was not aware of it, which is interesting. And he, umpired several World Series and other big sporting events and such throughout his career. Now, if you look at some earlier podcasts, I don't know which episode I have it on, but I know I did an umpire spotlight on him. But I thought that he was interesting because obviously as I'm going through that Hall of Fame, I'm looking at all the baseball stuff because I'm a big baseball fan myself. But certainly the umpires caught my attention too, particularly Ernie Quigley. So that is my little mini umpire spotlight for this particular episode, just to reiterate the greatness of the sports official Ernie Quigley. Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Hammer and Umpire podcast is in the books, or at least on tape, I guess. I'm getting ready right now to get my gear all set and head out to umpire a summer collegiate league game out in Muskegon, Michigan. This will be the first one that I've worked this year. I used to work a lot more of them, but I've kind of cut down on those. And the Muskegon team is very good this year. They've got the best record at this point in the league, and they're probably going to make the playoffs. So I'm kind of hoping that they ask me to work one of the playoff games. I usually work 3-man, and that would be kind of fun. I've been able to work a little bit of 3-man with some of my summer tournaments this year, so it's always good to be in practice, and obviously I think 3-man is the most fun system to work. Until then, I hope you guys are staying healthy and getting some games in and getting better. You're thinking about maybe going to a camp yourself this coming fall, or maybe this summer if there's one that you can find, but definitely the fall camps are the way to go for most people. And until next time, keep calling strikes.